So yeah, we'll get started. The project for the Peruvian Price Quality Index is one that we've been actually working on for several months. In full disclosure, we tried to do this through the IBO, similar to the work that we do with the IBO report. There was a lack of consensus amongst the members, which kind of made execution a bit difficult on our side. But there was enough support for us to try to bring this into the world independently. And that is what we're trying to do, and that is why we organized this webinar. So kind of diving into the details, what we're looking at doing is taking the export data from Peru, which we currently make available through the Global Trade Data Service. And we'll look in more detail at that data here in a little bit. And from it, try to extract as much value as we possibly can. We already have, and it's a very, very rich data set. So we have daily data, we have the data available by exporter. It's updated to the week. We've already done a lot of work over this data set. But one area that's not structured, that we haven't worked with yet, is the comments. And from our initial research, we can see that around 25 to 30% of every data point that we have mentions a variety in one form or another. So what we're going to look to do is extract that information from the notes and structure it. So it's natural language processing. We take that raw text, which is handwritten by a person, and from it, clean it up, structure it so that we're able to look at by exporter and at the resolution of the data that we have available, where variety is available, we'll be able to identify that and use that. The idea with this information is to then run a clustering algorithm over it and see if we're able to pool a cluster of premium varieties away from the non-premium varieties. This will come out in two different products. One will be a public report. It'll have a very nice cover, similar to the one that we see here in this slide. And the other one, for sponsors of this project, will be exclusive access to the data. There's several levels at which this will be made available. So we have the mentioned sponsors, which will be companies that come online and will put their logo as a part of the public report. Featured sponsors, same thing, they get identified as a featured sponsor. And then they'll also get access to a weekly updated index where we're able to look at the results of this clustering for the premium varieties as well as the non-premium varieties. And then headline sponsor, which gets access to all of that goodness, as well as access to the raw data itself. So as much detail as we're able to get it, then we're going to. So far, we have three companies on board with us. Fall Creek and Planesa have signed up to be headline sponsors, and we're excited that North Bay is joining this as a featured sponsor. So let's look a bit about the data. This is straight out of our Global Trade Data Service. And what I want to show you guys here is, I just kind of give an overview of the information that we currently have available from Peru and give context to why we're looking at identifying quality within this data set and what benefits we might be able to find from it. So here we have the weekly exports by destination. You can see the role of the United States, China, Hong Kong, which might come together, for example, in the Pro-Arándanos data set, the United Kingdom, and every other destination that's reported through the export authority, which is also the tax authority. It's called SUNAT in Peru. That's our source for this data. And accompanying the volumes, we have the pricing. So this pricing, and it's got its complexities, and we'll look at that in a second. But this is the declared value at export. This pricing is also updated every single week. Every single week, we collect 2 years of history to make sure that we're able to capture every change that might come in as, for example, exports are reconciled with actually, like especially exports that go out on consignment. We don't know what the real price will be until that money comes back to the country. Since the export authority is the tax authority, those two data sets get updated in time. As soon as that data is available, we make it available here. And that's how we're able to report, especially the historic prices, usually within 4 weeks, like 4 to 7 weeks. These prices are really stable. They close out. The money comes back to Peru, and whatever was going to get reconciled has been reconciled. But especially for this historic data, those are pretty set, solid numbers. So when we think about this data with in the context of quality, as best can be measured by variety, well, I'm curious to answer a couple questions. One of the important ones is, for example, when the prices tanked, crashed, went down in a spectacular fashion in last season. I'm really curious to see what happened here with quality. So, did higher priced fruit fall at the same rate as lower priced fruit? Are the new genetics that are coming out of Fall Creek, like Sequoia Pop or Planasa, were they able to maintain their value at a higher rate than other varieties like Biloxi or Ventura? That's the kind of question that this effort's going to be able to answer. If we look at this in historic context, we're able to run this algorithm and this methodology over the entire, and we have more than 10 years of history, but for all intents and purposes, like the last 10 years are the most relevant for Peru. And running this over the entire last 10 years is going to be able to answer a lot of really interesting questions. So one theory that is kind of bouncing around in the industry is when quality gets differentiated, how does this differentiation actually come into the market based on the availability of this fruit? So that is to say, if 90% of the exports were all Biloxi, you're probably not going to have a whole lot of differentiation for quality, as people just want fruit. Like, you don't have any differentiation if you have just one type. And that's going to be the reality of the industry maybe 5 years ago. As more and more newer cultivars are coming onto the market, that split has changed dramatically. So when the cards are flipped, so when 70% of the market, for example, is high quality fruit, how does that differentiation affect pricing? If you can readily buy high quality fruit with new genetics that are bigger and tastier and travel better than some of these more traditional varieties, what's that going to do to the price of these more traditional varieties? Does that mean that the focus of the market is going to be So the retailers are going to buy as much high quality fruit as they can, and will that have a penalizing effect on the other varieties? And that's going to be a really interesting question to see as time has developed, and as that market share has changed dramatically over the last couple of years. I mean, especially in the last 2 years to an extent, but especially in the last year. How will that affect consumers? And if you're a company that's looking to invest in newer varieties or older varieties, plant new fields, how might that affect your expectations of return? If you're a company looking to change varieties, how will that affect your desire to go with a new varietal compared to another one? I don't know what the answer to that question is yet. That's exactly what we're trying to do with this project, is answer specifically that kind of question. As mentioned before, the data set is very rich. So we're able to not only look at this information as a market as a whole, looking at the different destinations that the fruit is going to, we can look at this by exporter. And this gives us helps us build a better idea of how, on one side, what the commercial strategy of each exporter is, but also how to work with this data. Because you kind of have to control for a lot of different factors, not only the producing region of the fruit, but also how it's produced. Some of that will be controlled by the exporter itself. There's also some considerations to take as far as the commercial practices of the exporters. So for example, here we have the pricing by exporter, and there's two that stand out quite a bit. On one hand, we have Agrovision, which I know we have people from Agrovision in watching this presentation, but unfortunately, for the effects of this project, your transfer pricing is not going to be super useful to us. So that's part of the work that we need to do, is clean out transfer pricing, which, I mean, makes commercial sense for you guys, but it doesn't capture the value or the return to producers of the fruit that's being exported. So, and they're not the only ones that are doing it. For all intents and purposes, I think there's a reasonable argument to be made that Hortifruit is doing something similar. But other companies, especially the ones that are based in Peru, that have their operations primarily in Peru, and they look at the returns of their sales to come back to finance that Peruvian company. And Camposol might be a very good example of it. Beta. And these are just the top 5, so that we have the entire list of them. But you can see how these companies, generally speaking, do move in line with each other and form a market for all intents and purposes. And you're able to see the effects, like the kind of ebbs and flows of the value of the fruit reflected in their pricing. And this is kind of what we want to capture by looking at that quality component as well. How does the market ebb and flow as we're looking at specifically quality within this data set? So, I mean, that's kind of looking at the components. We can look at a lot of different splits and cuts of the information that's available, including looking at one exporter, and I'm picking on Camposol because they're the biggest, for no other particular reason. But here we can see the exports, or the value of exports from Camposol by destination market. And again, what we're trying to do with this project is maybe not specifically for Camposol, but for Peruvian exports in general, be able to identify a quality component as best we can through varieties to this exact same data. So going back to our media kit, the pricing that we have set up for this will go up on the 1st of August. And this is to we want to incorporate as many sponsors as we can to this project. I mean, on one side, to finance it, I'm not going to be too altruistic in this. We do want to get paid for the work that we're doing. And I think there's a lot of value for the industry for this work. But another reason for it is to kind of give seriousness to the report through the support of these sponsors. So the more sponsors we have, the more inclusive and supported by the industry this information is going to look like. And at the end, when we have that public report, we want to share that as far and wide as possible. We want the retailers to have access to this information because it's objective. I mean, this is public data that we're working with. Anybody who wants to go out and set up the same infrastructure that we've set up will be able to replicate these results. We want to be as objective and kind of neutral in looking at this as we can, and hopefully build the stories that the industry is, that I believe the industry needs to hear as to the benefits and consequences of varietal change for our category. The plan right now is to try to bring on as much sponsorship as we can by the 1st of August. We will have, for the sponsors, an exclusive unveiling pre-release on the 25th of August. So this will be with our insights and the first cuts of the public report ready to go. And then the public report will go out and be shared as widely as we can on the 1st of September. This is our timeline. If we're able to push this up, if we get through our development goals faster, then we'd be very happy to do so. The goal is to have this available and public before the peak of the season arrives at market. Obviously, the faster we can work, the better. But we want to make sure that we're doing quality work and that is good. So that's our presentation. That's kind of the bulk of it. What I'd like to do now, I'm going to take questions, but we prepared a quick survey. It's 5 questions. It's very, very, very short. And I'll give you through the question and answer period to take your phone, scan the QR code, and answer these. And then we'll look at the results live, which I think will be kind of a cool experience, looking at what the impact of varieties are within the industry now for the participants that are on this webinar. So I think that's the core of the presentation. I tried to make it as concise as I could. I saw that some people ask questions in the chat, and let me see if I can pull some of these up. Other than all the AI assistants, which were very nice to leave notes. So, is it possible to filter data by conventional and organic? Yes, it is. Where 25 to 30% of the results are mentioned varieties, of that, 5% mention if it's organic or not. So we are going to get an idea of it. With organic, there's more we can do to kind of play with the data, because we have a very good idea looking at U.S. imports. For example, what gets to the U.S. and how much of that is organic. If we're able to build a relationship between the sample size of organic declarations and the import data on organic, then we'd actually be able to get a decent idea of what the total value of organic exports are, hopefully the week of actually export. With pricing, it'll be a sample size. I mean, we're still talking like 5% of the reports is still on, for example, at the peak of the season, that's going to be 100 different export declarations that are mentioning that are organic exports. So it's still a good amount of data. We'll have to, part of the work that we're going to do is teasing out those insights and looking at what we might be able to glean from these different data sets and mixing them, bring them all together. Let's see. Macarena's note assistant is saying something from the LaCroix. It seems like you've been mentioning new varieties, premium varieties, interchangeably. New doesn't necessarily equate to premium quality. That is very true. We actually, what we hope, and this is, again, part of the work that is being kind of done right now, is to be able to let the data itself tell us what should be considered premium and which ones should not. This is going to be done through different clustering methodologies that are available, where we're able to look at the different factors that we have available to describe a specific variety, be it the destination market or the exporter or the variety that's being mentioned, and see if within the data itself, we're able to kind of build clusters that separate, say, high quality fruit from not so high quality fruit as dictated by the price. That's going to be our measurement tool per se. What that's going to also give us is a ranking of the varieties, like which ones are being most valued per se, and which ones are being least. And then at some point, a cutoff to where we say, okay, kind of anything that's under this. And again, this is going to be really interesting work that's going to be done. This is the data science that needs to be applied to this. My kind of what I'd like, the map that I have in my head as we approach this would ideally create little cluster bubbles that are able to stick together if we're able to kind of split and dice the data well enough, then hopefully the data itself tells us which ones are the premiums and which ones are not. And we're able to kind of see these evolve and see the quote unquote premium category develop over time and grow and have this be a natural function of the data itself. From Ivan Salazar, are you going to be able to separate prices of products sold with no packing, just in bulk, that get shipped to the US and then packed for the US for different labels? From the product that is packed directly in Peru, goes to the US, already prepared for retailers? I'm not sure. We'll see. I mean, there's going to be some labels out there that are pretty well established that do this practice. And there's going to be others that are not. A bit, it depends on what's in the information from the initial tests, like what's in the notes and what we're able to kind of structure from that. From the initial research that we've done, I do not believe so. So we're going to have to use different parameters to kind of see if we're able to extract these kind of insights. My thinking at the moment is that the companies that are practicing these kind of commercial strategies per se are going to be relatively uniform within themselves. So that's where, taking into account the exporter, when looking at this data, and setting and trying to factor out the practices or the variance in price for variety within the exporter itself and compare a similar parameter to all the other exporters might be a useful tool to kind of like set everything equal to itself and then build that index in a much more realistic fashion. And that should factor out things like exactly what's being mentioned. In theory, if a company is doing like half of their volume, like straight like labels for retail, and the other half are they doing bulk for to then be repacked at destination? As long as they're relatively consistent in how they're commercializing it, then when we compare this week to week or year to year, we should still be able to see that differentiation for this exporter within the parameters that we're able to track. So for a specific destination for this particular producer. If there's any other questions, you guys can also pipe up. I'm nothing against anybody sharing.
Colin, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
This is Doug LaCroix. I just have a question. Maybe I missed some of the nuts and bolts. I missed the first few minutes, but do you already have data coming through pricing by variety? Are you asking the industry to now submit pricing by variety?
No. So what we're looking at doing is building an index based on public information. So we already have the data. We're getting that from the Peruvian Export Authority. And what we're looking to do with this project is to take the notes that are written by each exporter or that are part of each declaration and structure the information that's available within it, where 25 to 30% of these notes mention varieties in one capacity or another. So the idea with this report, at least in this first stage, is to be an objective look at the potential impact of varieties over quality as is made available through public data. So we're not the sole owners of truth. Anybody else that sets up this infrastructure can go out and replicate it if they wish. It's a lot of work, but that's kind of what we get paid for. So, and hopefully that makes a stronger argument with the industry and with the different points along the supply chain regarding the truthfulness of, or the utility of the insights that we're going to be able to build from this work. I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, maybe you can help me understand. You said notes. I don't know what that is. So is the variety delineation that you're seeing in notes, is that on every shipment? Is that on a percentage of shipments? How accurate is this data? So
it's on about 25. So it's on the declarations, and it's the comments that go along with the declarations. And looking at the historic data that we have, in 25 to 30% of the declarations, we haven't tied that to a volume yet. It could be more than 25 to 30%. It depends on how much volume was associated with that specific declaration. It could be less. That's part of the work that we're doing right now. And so, yeah, the idea is, of these, where we already see a big mass of reports, and for example, 25 to 30%, like we looked specifically at the height of the season in week 47, we can go back and look at that. So here, for example, or week 42, we had 500 different reports on this specific week, that mentioned the variety of the fruit that was leaving Peru. So it's not the entirety of every export we're going to be able to assign a price to, but 500 reports in 1 week is a pretty decent sample size. And it is far and away the best data that is publicly available on the globe regarding the exports of fresh blueberries. And it just happens to be that it's also the biggest exporter in the world. I think, does that answer the question?
Yeah, thank you. That's helpful.
So cool. Are there any other questions? Well, if there's no other questions, then we'll see if anybody actually bothered to answer the survey. And so we have 12 respondents. And this is, I mean, it's kind of a cool tool. If anybody wants to respond, or they're still in the middle of the survey, by all means, feel free to do so. This will be updated in real time. So the first question was, how would you rate the importance of fruit quality in determining price levels in your market? And percent of respondents said it was very important, which offers a bit of perspective for the conversation that we're having. In your opinion, does the current market accurately reflect the added value of premium fruit? And this is also interesting. It's not, so a third believes that it does. 41.7% believes somewhat, and 16% believes no. So that's actually a pretty interesting mix. My hope is that I believe for the end consumer, and that is the person that is financing every other point in the supply chain, having quality fruit to eat is a good thing. When you go to the store and you buy good blueberries, it's amazing. It's great. I very much enjoy it. And when you go to the store and you buy blueberries and, you know, half of them are moldy or soggy or sandy or what have you, it's a bit of a disappointment. And along the supply chain, I mean, especially in the last couple of years, there's been no real different, like 5 years ago, there was really no differentiation between good blueberries or bad blueberries. They're just little blue balls. And in the last couple of years, we've started to see more and more differentiation, especially at the retail level, when you start getting like the sweetest batch and some of these other labels that are actually making a conceited effort to sort out the premium quality fruit. To indicate to the consumer what will be the best eating experience for them. That should be a part of the conversation, that should be a part of the industry, so that then if more money is able to go back to the producers of this good fruit, then more good fruit will be produced. And you have that feedback loop that ultimately gives a better eating experience to the end consumer. And I believe if the end consumer has a consistently good eating experience, that eating experience will want to be replicated more often, bringing more dollars and more money to the category, which is good for everybody involved. So my hope is that this report will be another tool with which to have this conversation about quality. And hopefully this chart will reflect that in the months and years to come as we develop this and make it available. Have you made strategic decisions, pricing, sourcing, marketing, based on quality differentials in blueberries. And this is encouraging. Everybody said, or yes, frequently, or occasionally. So at least it's part of the conversation, and that makes me very content. Would a standardized price quality index help you better understand or justify your commercial strategy? And I'm kind of guessing that's why most people came here. So I'm also encouraged to see that response. And I'm also very thankful for the ratings that everybody put together for this report. All right, that's what we got for you. Thank you very much for participating. If you're interested in becoming a sponsor, and please reach out to the sales guys, sales@agronometrics.com. There'll also be some follow-up emails, a recording of the presentation that we'll be sending out. If anybody else has any other questions, I'm also more than happy to take them. And otherwise, thank you very much for coming.